Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a Diablo 4 Season 7 class tier list. If you're wondering what class to play this season, this video should help you out. So we all know that Season 6 was the season of the Spiritborn. They dominated everything. Season 7, the Spiritborn is being brought down in power substantially. Not only were the bugs fixed that was causing the Spiritborn to tremendously overperform by a factor of 1,000,000, it's also been nerfed altogether. We're going to see much better class variety and overall state of balance in Season 7. In fact, if you played anything other than the Spiritborn in Season 6, then Season 7 is going to be a big power leap for you for a couple of reasons. First off is the witch powers. This is the season theme in Season 7. We spoke about an introduction to the witch powers in previous videos. We'll have guides on them in the future, but overall, just everyone's power floor is being raised because we're all going to be rocking these new additional powers on top of our existing power. Then not only are we seeing buffs to all classes that are not Spiritborn, we're also seeing specifically buffs pretty much across the board to ultimate skills, and this is seeing the real rise of ultimate builds now in Season 7. So again, overall power levels are going up across the board this season. Every class can do all the content in this game. Every class can crush Torment 4 difficulty with the right builds. And Maxroll.gg has build guides for every class that'll enable you to, with enough time and effort, get to pit at least 100. But before I move on, a quick word from this video's sponsor, Saeli, a new eSIM service app from Nord Security. If you've ever struggled with staying connected while traveling, like waiting in a long airport line for a SIM card or dealing with outrageous roaming fees, this one's for you. When I traveled to Germany for Gamescom last year, getting a SIM card for my phone was a giant nightmare. I thankfully had friends in Germany who helped me out, but even with their help, it proved to be a huge hassle for them. Had I known that something like Saeli existed, I would have saved myself and my friends plenty of headache, time, and frustration. Saeli is an eSIM, meaning you don't need a physical SIM card. You don't have to open up your phone and swap out your SIM, worry about losing your main SIM. It's super easy. You just download the Saeli app, choose a plan like the 5 GB option I'm using, and at checkout, just enter my exclusive code Rhykker to get 15% off. Boom. Now you're all set for seamless internet access wherever you travel. No more worrying about finding Wi-Fi or running out of data. And Saeli has affordable eSIM plans available in over 180 countries. You don't even need to install a different eSIM for every country. It's a one and done thing. With Saeli, you get instant internet access the moment your plane lands. It's compatible with iOS and Android, and they even notify you before your data runs out so you can easily top up. Plus, there's 24/7 customer support and a full refund guarantee if your device isn't compatible. So, download the Saeli app now and use code Rhykker for an exclusive 15% discount on Saeli eSIM data plans. Or even easier, just scan the QR code on your screen to get started right away. Travel's a hassle, but not Saeli. Now, as for my tier list here, this is going to be a ranking of relative power amongst the classes. This is based on PTR testing, as well as on the patch notes that came out post-PTR based on PTR feedback. That said, these are best guesses, and every season we have seen some surprise build, at least one emerge at some point, whether it's a bug, whether it's some unknown interaction that ends up running away and exceeding expectations. So do stay tuned for updates on what the best builds of Season 7 will be. Now, as we get into the tier list, I want to clarify my rating criteria. This list is based on how classes perform in these 4 categories, and I weigh them in the following order of importance. Number 1, most important, is their pit clearing ability. How far into pits this class can push with a number of builds. This is the most important criteria because if a class cannot push high into pits, no one's going to say it's a good class. Second criteria is how good this class is at speed farming. Speed farming is basically the majority of what you're going to be doing in the end game. It's when you are trying to be fast and efficient at farming up your Hell Tides, your Whispers, your Nightmare Dungeons, your lower tier pits. The key here is not just being able to tackle the content, because again, everyone can tackle Torment 4. It's about doing so quickly and efficiently. Third criteria is how good this class is against tormented bosses. Taking on those Ubers, you need to get those uniques, you need to get those mythics, or you'll want to eventually. Farming up these bosses is a core part of the end game, and generally big single target damage builds here are going to shine. Then lastly, and least importantly, is the 1 to 60 leveling experience. In last season's tier list, I stopped factoring this in because now it's so fast to level up to 60, but I realized A lot of new players have come to this game, so I'm adding it back in as a criteria, but I'm weighing it very, very little compared to the other criteria. So what does S tier mean for me? For me, an S tier class is a class that has multiple builds that excel in each of those 4 categories. It's not about which class has the one best build. Otherwise, here's your answer. Necromancer, Bloodwave, go. This tier list is about, okay, I want to play this class, I want to take advantage of the new armory feature that lets me easily swap between builds, and I want all those builds that I'm going to be playing on this class, on this one character, to just dominate any activity I'm doing. And of course, as we go through the classes, we'll also highlight specific builds. So we're going to start down in the D tier. Here we have the Sorcerer. Sorcerer's facing a bit of a fall from grace, and part of this is something that's actually been a benefit to the Sorcerer, and that's because it got a significant nerf to its most powerful interaction that was basically worked into every build. By nerfing this, we now see much greater diversity amongst what are really good Sorcerer builds, but the consequence is that overall, now, the Sorcerer is a weaker class. That one crutch that was propping up the Sorcerer was removed. This was worked into just about every Sorcerer build. Now it's gone. So again, we're seeing greater diversity in what a build consists of for a Sorcerer, but its power ceiling has taken a hit as a consequence. That said, when power doesn't matter as much, Sorcerers excel. Speed farming, no problem. Anything Torment 4 or not too high difficulty, it's going to destroy very rapidly. Leveling, it's amazing. Lightning Spear and Fireball are both going to be great speed farming options. But when it comes to bossing, the Sorcerer cannot keep up with the other classes. It just can't bring that single target DPS as fast as the others. Things get even more dismal for the Sorcerer when you're trying to push in the pit. Probably its best bet's going to be a Firebolt build, and even that, it's going to be behind other classes. So that brings us next to the C tier, where we have, against all odds, who would have thought, the Spiritborn. Now again, Season 6, pretty much no other class existed other than the Spiritborn because it was 1,000,000 times more powerful, no exaggeration, literally 1,000,000 times more powerful than the other classes, but that was largely due to a couple of bugs which have now been fixed. And on top of that though, the Rod of Kepelepi, very, very, very powerful item for a number of Spiritborn builds, has been nerfed significantly. So that's a 1-2 punch that brings the Spiritborn down to its knees. I should stress though, C tier does not mean the Spiritborn is bad. Leveling, it's amazing. Speed content, it's amazing. Spiritborn has so many super strong speed farming builds to pick from. If I were to recommend one Spiritborn build to rule them all though, it would be Quill Volley. And that's because it's the best bet for Spiritborns for bossing. Best single target damage. It does very well in bossing. And then pushing the pit, also the best option, but it's just not going to keep up with the top classes in the pit. Spiritborn players are going to feel a big difference this season. Now, in the B tier, nothing. We're skipping straight to A tier because, honestly, overall, this season is in a really good state of balance. We got lots of really good options to pick from. So in the A tier, we got the Barbarian, the Druid, and the Necromancer. Let's start by talking about the Barbarian here. Through leveling, through speed farming, bossing, Barbarian has multiple builds that are going to excel. But for pushing pit, looks like it's going to be Earthquake and only Earthquake. Now, the Earthquake builds actually be great at pretty much all content in the game, so if and when I make a Barbarian this season, I'm going to make an Earthquake Barbarian. It just excels at everything. It's also going to be one of the best pushing builds in the game for the pit. That's what it's looking like. Definitely in the top 3. So Barbarian, not an S tier because it's really only got the one pit pushing build in Earthquake. But again, get that Earthquake build. It's all you need. Now let's talk about the Druid. The Druid actually has multiple builds that are going to be great in the pit, at bossing, and at speed farming. Those multiple builds, Cataclysm and Lacerate. Both alt builds. Like we said, ultimates are out of control this season. So you have 2 flavors of Druid that you can run with that, again, you take that one build, you crush anything you want to do in the game. Where the Druid loses points is that it is the worst for leveling 1 to 60. Now, it's gotten a lot better. I gotta say, over the seasons, it has gotten better and better to level a Druid, but the other classes still beat it by a mile. Though I'll no longer say that leveling a Druid is miserable. They made a lot of great changes that give us better ways to manage our resource early on, which is very appreciated. Alright, let's talk Necromancer. Necromancer has arguably the best leveling build in the game with Blood Surge, and there's other options as well if you don't want to go with that. It's got builds to destroy bosses. It's got builds to push the pit. Where the Necromancer lags behind is quite literally lagging behind its speed content. It's just a slow class. It can deal more damage than any other class in the game, but when we're talking speed content, we're talking about those open world T4 Torment 4 farms, you gotta go fast. And pretty much the only option that the Necro has there is Blood Surge. So if you're running a Necro, you can't have the one build to rule them all. You're gonna have to run Blood Surge for your farming content. But then for Pit or Boston, you got other options. And if there's one build that I would recommend most, it's gonna be Blood Wave. But you also have Bone Spear as a solid option, but Blood Wave #1, likely to be the, as we said earlier, best build in the game with regards to it's going to clear the highest pit. And for a lot of people, that is what defines the best build in the game. So if and when I make a Necro, I'm going to have my one Blood Surge build for farming and my Blood Wave for bossing and pits. And that takes us to the S tier, rising on up. He was doing okay last season, but it's so much better this season, the Rogue. No matter what you are doing in this game, you have multiple builds that are going to excel. But if there is one Rogue build to rule them all, one that's going to excel at every activity, it's Rain of Arrows. My starter for Season 7 is going to be Rogue. I'm going to start Barrage for leveling, move into Rain of Arrows then for endgame. Although I might wait and see what uniques I get as drops and let the drops kind of steer me towards a build, at least as an intermediate step, towards going towards Rain of Arrows. Because again, pretty much every category of content in the endgame has like 4 really good builds that you can do. Now, I should specify the top 3 pit pushing builds, or pit pushing classes altogether. It's looking to be Necro, Barbarian, and Druid. So Rogue isn't going to be pushing those same numbers as those other 3. So if that's what's most important to you with regards to how you measure your tiers, then I guess by your definition, Rogue's not going to be S tier, but for me, it's still going to perform exceptionally well in the pit. It's still going to have multiple builds that can push very well in the pit, and just multiple builds that'll be able to destroy everything in the game. But I turn the question to you folks. What do you value? What is your tier list definition? What do you look for in a top class? Sound off in the comments, folks, as well as with what class you're going to start Season 7 with. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more Season 7 guides. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Special thanks to my supporters for making these videos possible. And subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.